Earlier this month, the Supreme Court issued a ruling that both strengthened and broadened the IRS's enforcement power. In the case of Commissioner of Internal Revenue versus Zuck, a taxpayer named Jennifer Zuck claimed that the IRS erroneously credited a $50,000 payment that she made to her then-husband's account instead of her own. Both Ms. Zuck and her then-husband were separate filers. The IRS disagreed with her that it had erroneously applied her payment, and it sought to forcibly collect her unpaid taxes with continuous and ongoing levies. Over the years, Zuck filed several annual 1040 tax returns showing refunds. Instead of being issued those refunds, the IRS instead applied them to her outstanding 2010 tax liability. The IRS eventually collected what it said Ms. Zuck owed, and her tax liability reached zero. At that point, the IRS no longer had any reason to levy her. The IRS then moved to dismiss her case in U.S. tax court, arguing that the court lacked jurisdiction as there was no longer any levy on her property. The tax court agreed and ruled in the IRS's favor, dismissing her case. She appealed, eventually bringing her case before the Supreme Court. There, the court upheld the tax court's decision. Ruling against her, the Supreme Court held that the tax court loses jurisdiction over a proceeding to challenge a proposed tax levy once the possibility of a levy is off the table. Justice Neil Gorsuch, the only dissenter of the 9 justices, wrote a dissent arguing, and I quote, "The court's decision hands the IRS a powerful new tool to avoid accountability for its mistakes in future cases like this one." End quote. Justice Gorsuch's dissent further argued that the IRS was given a roadmap for never having to answer a taxpayer's complaint that it has made a mistake. Theoretically, to terminate a taxpayer's tax court case, all the IRS has to do is drop the contested levy to avoid an unfavorable ruling. This easily employed tactic is virtually risk-free to the IRS, as it could instead use alternate, aggressive collection methods to collect the tax due. In my view, the Supreme Court's recent decision gives the IRS a new, clever, though devious way to completely avoid any accountability. Up until recently, the IRS would have agreed with Gorsuch's argument. In 2003, the IRS stated that a motion to dismiss a U.S. tax court case is inappropriate so long as the taxpayer still contests either the existence or amount of their tax liability. The IRS's motion to dismiss her case and the Supreme Court's ruling in the IRS's favor on this specific issue is a significant and marked departure for both. The IRS is more powerful and less accountable than it has ever been before. One final thing to note on this decision. In the IRS's argument that her case should be dismissed entirely, it argued that she could simply start over by filing a new refund suit in federal district court. Notwithstanding the substantial additional financial cost and time this would take on an ordinary taxpayer, that was not at all possible for Ms. Zuck, nor is it possible for anyone else who finds themselves in this undesirable situation. As Gorsuch pointed out, the IRS's suggestion that she file suit for refund was a trap for the unwary. He stated, and I quote, "The IRS's invitation for Ms. Zuck to start over really turns out to be little more than an effort to deprive her of complete relief." End quote. Simply put, once she lost her case in U.S. tax court, the time to file a refund suit had already expired. So what's the takeaway for this, for people that owe the IRS money? If you have balances owed to the IRS, never try to initially resolve these issues on your own. The IRS is incredibly powerful and smart. It knows how to forcibly take your money, and it knows how to completely avoid accountability in a court of law. Thank you for joining me today. See you at the next huddle.